What's going on, everybody? It's yours truly, Coach Mike Dubb, and I'm here with another edition of Lockdown Defense Sports Studio. And of course, it's time for the Week 5 Commanders Weekly Recap. If you've been following so far this season, you know every week we come to you with content from our teams. Of course, we got a Chargers insider. Of course, we have our Chiefs insider and me, your resident Commanders insider, where we talk about all things that happened in the previous week, as well as give you a preview for the upcoming week's matchup. This week's special matchup, of course, we have the Commanders versus our very own Chargers. Of course, we got a lot of Chargers supporters and AFC West supporters on this network, so it should be a good matchup. Both teams really need a win coming off of losses last week. Both teams facing some injuries, so we're going to get into that, some previews. We're also going to talk about what happened last week. Unfortunately, things didn't go the way that we wanted them to go. Got to give all credit to Atlanta. They played well, so we're going to talk about that as well. And then, of course, we're going to give you some things to look out for this week as far as keys to victory and that matchup against the Chargers. So, without further ado, we're just going to jump right into it and start out by talking about Week 4's matchup at Atlanta. I mentioned before that this was going to be a tough match. Just because every time we play Atlanta, it's always a good game. Last year we played them, it went down in the overtime at Washington. That was when Penix first got his start. Bijan was a problem then. Uh, you know, uh, my guy at wide receiver, slipping my mind right now, but the big time wide receiver for for Atlanta had a big game then as well, and this year wasn't much different. We went down to Atlanta. And their guys just were those guys. This was a classic case of Jimmy's and Joe's, where they had the better players. They outplayed us. They out schemed us. We looked outmatched, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Offense, they never stopped fighting, so I give them credit for that. But on defense, we looked completely outmatched in the trenches. We couldn't get consistent pressure on Penix, which caused the secondary to have to stay in coverage for way too long. There was a lot of communications issues on the back end, specifically with our secondary, that left guys running wide open. So there was a lot of problems that we saw. Drake London is the receiver that was kept slipping on mine. I don't know why I kept slipping on mine, but yeah, Drake London had a big game. I mentioned that before. Pitts showed up. The Atlanta Falcons looked like who we thought they should look like and who they should have been looking like all along. I'm not sure why it had to be this game that they had their breakout game with all the young superstars. Bijan is a matchup problem, was a matchup problem. Bobby Wagner looked every bit of 35 years old trying to chase him around, completely unmatched. Penix made some plays. Like I said, we couldn't get consistent pressure on him. So it was overall a tough day in the office. That being said, I do give credit to the offense for continuing to fight back. Mariota, put the offense in position to where we made it a game at times. It felt like, we were trying to creep back into it, but Atlanta just kept pulling away because our defense really couldn't get a stop and get off the field and get right. So normally I wouldn't have a player of the game for a loss, but I do give credit to Debo. Debo has really been a great addition to this offense and to this team. Of course, making plays in the run game, in the pass game. Of course, he's been involved in the run game a little bit, not as much as we saw him in San Francisco, but even the special teams game. So, I'm happy for the production we're getting from Debo. I think that will continue, especially in the absence of Terry McLaurin. But shout out to Debo for showing up. Shout out to Debo for fighting with that offense to the end. Like I said, there was times we felt like we were creeping into it and we could have made this a game, but we just couldn't stop them from pulling away. So tough loss. Definitely, a Falcon team that I wasn't sure what we are going to see from them with that previous loss that they took to Carolina. I mentioned it before that it could have been this situation here where they were hungry and they came out, firing it on all cylinders, which it looked like they did. Or I said it was going to be a bad game for them coming off that bad loss. And the keys to victory I mentioned were forcing turnovers, stopping Bijan, and we didn't do any of that. So big shout out, like I said, credit to the Falcons, the Commanders. We got a rebound. And to make things, a little bit harder, of course, we got another tough opponent this week. So let's get into this week's matchup. We are moving into week 5. Hard to believe we're already at week 5 of the season, almost a quarter of the season, or a quarter of the season just about done already. And we're about to start getting in the mix. Really, teams are starting to come together. They're starting to gel. We're starting to get some chemistry. You're starting to see what you have with guys, and at the same time, you're going to have to dig deep into that roster because you're facing some injuries. So, that being said, we're moving on to the Chargers this week at LA. This is a team that's in a similar situation for us as us, battling a lot of injuries. They're actually battling more injuries than us, specifically on that offensive line, unit. That's something that's really making a big difference. We saw them lose a tough one to the Giants, a big upset, one of the bigger upsets of the season so far. And we know the Giants' MO is their front four. Those guys up front putting pressure on Herbert. They kept him from getting comfortable last week. We're going to have to take that same identity and we're going to have to replicate that if we want success this week. There's a lot of matchup things that are going to happen that's going to happen in this game. That's really going to be dependent upon how we coach. Coaching is going to come up big. There were a lot of communication issues, specifically, like I mentioned before, with our secondary and our pass coverage that we faced in Atlanta. I'm really charging Joe Witt and the rest of the defense to get that together this week. It's not going to be easy. We're going to get a better quarterback in Herbert. We're going to get a solid receiving team, a solid receiving core, and a solid run game. So, like I said, it's really going to be dependent upon the trenches. That's where it's going to start getting pressure on Herbert, keeping him from being comfortable, and of course, keeping them from establishing a good run game and keeping them off balance as well. So, really going to be looking for that defense to step up big. Sunday afternoon game, of course, 4:25 on the West Coast, so travel shouldn't be too much of a problem for us. It's funny. I think I saw something that said, schedule wise, we don't play another 1 o'clock game until like after Thanksgiving or something like that. So between primetime games and traveling, we're going to be facing some pretty late kickoffs. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. Like I said, 4:25 is pretty standard, not too bad. Atlanta is not, or sorry, LA is not too much of a disadvantage for the away team. Of course, that's one of those destination cities similar to Las Vegas where fans tend to travel a lot to go to these cities and to go to these games. So I don't think it'll be too much of a home field advantage for the Chargers. I'm hoping that we can stay healthy. I've heard a lot about that turf. We can't really afford too many more injuries. We are going to be missing Terry again. Good news is that Jaden Daniels should be back. So we're looking forward to that. So this is really just going to be which team is the healthiest, which team is coached best. All phases of the game, I think, will be in play here. And we're looking for the dogs to be dogs. And we're going to talk about that a little bit as we go forward. So speaking of X factors, I mentioned dogs being dogs. One thing that stood out to me in the Atlanta game is, Atlanta just had the best players on the field, and I say that because even when you're in position, Bijan is going to make a play. Drake London can make a play sometimes. Pitts can make a play, and there were times in that game where we were in striking distance, and their guys just came up big. Their Jimmys and Joes just came up big and made those things happen. I'm looking for that to be us this week against Los Angeles. I'm looking for there to be a time where Jaden Daniels just takes over the game, makes things happen with his feet, extends the play. Whatever happens needs to happen. I think this could be one of his breakout games of the season. I say breakout games. Obviously, he's missed some time, but the games that he has played, he's kind of been a game manager. Hasn't really had a super big performance, which is fine. We're not looking for that. But this is one of those games where he might need to be Superman on occasion, on a couple of plays, still protect the ball, don't do too much. But I am looking to see him use his feet a little bit. I think that we can have an advantage with Jaden Daniels just being Jaden Daniels and putting this game on his back and being able to win it in close situations. I think there's a lot of talk about his health. I think that he can go out and dispel that rumor. Or that notion that he's still a little banged up and his knee is a little banged up. I think that we err on the side of caution when it comes to Jaden. So when he has an injury, it may be a nagging injury, something small. I think a lot of times, we may err on the side of caution and watch him in practice, sit him out of practice, sit him out of games. I don't think it's as big as a deal as people would seem. I really think that he still will be able to be him and make some plays. So looking for Jaden Daniels to be him. And on the defensive side of the ball, Dorrance Armstrong, who's had a really good year this year, I'm looking for him to put pressure on that offensive line that's banged up and get to Justin Herbert, make some plays. Deron Payne has been amazing this year. Dorrance Armstrong has been, right alongside of him. So that Dorrance Armstrong, the rest of that D line, let's replicate what the Giants did last week, and let's keep, Justin Herbert from being comfortable and getting after him. So that being said, what are the keys to the victory this week? Number one, I mentioned it before, winning in the trenches. So both the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, we're going to have to win in the trenches. Defensively, I mentioned that goes along with part two, pressuring Herbert, but also stopping the run and getting consistent pressure. So not just, getting to him on, first down or, once a drive. I need consistent pressure on Herbert in the trenches. On the offensive side of the ball, I need us to stay on schedule so that we can slow down their pass rush and take advantage of the big plays that we can make up front as well. Looking for that big run game. Um, Obviously, with Jaden Daniels coming back, hopefully that opens it up a little bit. And Mariota was pretty mobile as well, but hopefully we can get teams on that RPO a little bit so that we can get that run game going. So the trenches, the trenches, the trenches. That's both point one and point two. Of course, the run game and the pass game, but also getting pressure on Herbert. And then finally, special teams. And I mentioned special teams because we've been pretty good so far with it. Jalen Lane has been, pretty solid with special teams. I think he's proven to be a threat as long as he can hold on to the ball, protect the ball. Debo has gotten some big returns on special teams. Even McCaffrey's gotten some special big plays on special teams. And in a game like this, where teams are going to be pretty even, it's going to be those opportunities where we can really change the tide, get a big point swing, get the momentum on our side, and possibly steal a possession from them. So if we can get a big game out of our special teams, a block kick, block punt, field goal, not a field goal, a punt return, kick return, something like that. We can steal some points and keep things rolling. I think that can make a big difference in a game like this. So, special teams, trenches, get pressure on Herbert. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're going to need to do in order to win. Uh, Let me know what you guys think. What are your thoughts? What needs to happen this week? Who do you have? Do you have the Chargers? Do you have the Commanders? It's going to be a great game. Looking forward to chopping it up with Rob and Coach Defense. With some pretty competitive banter. I'm sure that they're expecting a big win for their team, and both teams need it. So, of course, hopefully both teams remain healthy. I think it should be a good game overall. Let me know what you all think in the comments, and we look forward to another good week.